Hi everyone, it's Andrea. Welcome back to my channel. Today I just wanted to do a quick wrap up of what I read in July, including through the booktubeathon. It's not a very long list, I think it's 8 books altogether, but still I'm pretty happy with what I've read, so let's just go ahead and jump right into it. So the first thing that I finished in July was something that I've been kind of reading slowly in between other books since about March, and that is Ellen Montgomery's The Story Girl. Now, I'm like a massive Anna Green Gables fan. I love that series so much, and I've really enjoyed the Emily series as well. But now I had read The Story Girl before several years ago, probably about 10 years ago, and really enjoyed it then. And not that I didn't enjoy it this time, I definitely did. I don't think I enjoyed it as much as I did the first time I read it, or as much as I enjoyed other books by Ellen Montgomery. I just found it was maybe a little bit more preachy than some of her other books, and I just didn't connect with the characters in the same way that I connect with Anne or Emily. But I still really want to read. I haven't ever read the sequel to The Story Girl, which is The Golden Road. So that one's kind of on my ones that I want to read. So I want to reread Story Girl first. So yeah, I still enjoyed it. I think I gave it a 3 stars or 4 stars. I don't remember. But definitely still one that I enjoyed, just not as much as some of her other books. The second book that I finished is this one. As you can see, it was from the bargain table at Chapters. It was $7. And I picked it up because at the time I was kind of watching, I think I had been watching on Netflix a series just about the ER, I don't remember, Untold Stories of the ER, that's it. I was watching that. And I saw this and I was like, hey, that looks pretty cool. It's supposed to be true stories of weird medicine and dangerous doctors. But I finished it, I read the whole thing, but it wasn't really all that great. I think I gave it 2 stars. The actual information that it contains is interesting, but it's very inconsistently written. And like some of the stories you expect are going to be like stories, and then it's just like background information. I don't know. It just wasn't very consistent. There's some weird grammar errors that drove me crazy, because grammar drives me nuts when it's bad. And I found it overall really inconsistent. Some things were told as like stories, and other things were more like articles, and it just I don't know. Overall, just didn't jive that well with me. But I kind of wish it had, because the information was really interesting. It just, like I said, inconsistent and really not what it said it is. Like, it's like true stories of weird medicine and dangerous doctors, but a lot of it is just kind of like old medicine, things that we don't do anymore, but we used to do, and it's like they didn't really know any better. And I don't know, it's like they're kind of judging old medicine against modern standards in some cases, and I don't know. Overall, I'm glad it was just a bargain book, because it wasn't that great, and I probably wouldn't pick up any other. I think there's a bunch of these, a brief history of books that they have in the bargain section, and yeah, I probably wouldn't pick up anymore, because just not that great. And then the third book I finished after I was kind of reading this, I was feeling like something kind of familiar, so I decided to pick up again the first book of the Beautiful Creatures series. So I reread Beautiful Creatures, which again is one that I read many years ago. I think this is my 3rd time reading it, that particular book. And yeah, it's one that I enjoy. It's not like the best book in the world, but I like the characters. Ethan and Lena are both complex characters. I think they're really interesting, and I like the whole southern magic flair to it. I think it's really well developed, and it's really interesting and unique. So I kind of enjoy that aspect of the series. So it was fun to kind of reread that to kind of get my reading game on before booktubeathon started. So 3 books in the first 3 weeks of the month, not my best reading month ever. But then we got into booktubeathon, and I think I actually did pretty well there. So yeah, let's get into that now. So during booktubeathon, I did have 7 books that I planned to read, and while I did not finish all of them, I did finish 5 of my 7, and I started both of the others. So I'm pretty proud of that. I think I did a good job, and yeah, I'm pretty happy with my progress. But so let's kind of talk about what I read. So the first thing I read was this guy, which is Virals by Kathy Rakes and Brendan Rakes. And as I said at the beginning of booktubeathon, my TBR, this is set in the same world as the Bones Temperance Brennan books. This is about her grandniece. And honestly, one of my biggest kind of, I think, complaints about this book is that fact. Like, it didn't need to be set in the same universe. And in fact, because this is kind of like pushing the envelope a little bit between like realistic science fiction and like, realistic science novels and science fiction, pushing that barrier, I think that it would have been better off being its own series, especially given that it's like aimed at young adults as opposed to adults like the original series. I see why they did it, but really they just name drop Temperance Brennan a couple of times, and that's about it. There's like a gift that like main character Tori gets from her great aunt, grandaunt, whatever, great aunt, I guess, and that's about it. So I don't know. I don't think it was worth it being set in the same universe, but that's just me. Overall, I did like this book. I thought it was really interesting. Essentially, there's a group of 4 friends, Tori, and 3 boys. They are teenagers. They're kind of like the smart kids. All of their parents work for a laboratory, which is located on kind of like an island. And they live on an island and kind of ferry into this like fancy boarding school every day. And they're kind of like the weird kids. So they all kind of bond together, and they're all friends. They live in the same single row of houses that's on this island. They're the only, like, very few people live there type thing. And they spend all their time together. And they break into, I guess, like on a regular basis, they go into the island where the lab is, and they just kind of explore and whatever. And they end up being exposed to this canine parvovirus, experimental canine parvovirus, and they change. It changes them. This one doesn't explore too much what that change does to them. They're going through the change throughout the book, but a lot more energy is devoted to a cold case disappearance that they're trying to solve. A girl who disappeared some, like, 50 years previously. They found a set of dog tags, and so that leads them to this kind of missing person case, and so they're trying to solve that throughout the novel while going through this change, and all this other stuff is going on. So, yeah, overall, interesting book, and I do want to read some more from the series. I think there's 2 or 3 others in the series currently. The next number 2 is called Seizure. Same kind of idea where they're solving a mystery, and then also dealing with this like special powers that they now have. I don't know. Interesting concept. Not like my favorite ever, but was interesting enough that I would read the next ones, but I would probably just borrow them from the library as opposed to purchasing them for myself. So I also started on that day this one. I haven't finished this one yet. I'm actually not that far into it, as you can see. This is a collection of short stories. I've read 3 of the 17, but the 3 that I've read were all incredibly awesome. The third one that I read was the one in here that's by Joyce Carol Oates. It's called The Doll Master, and it was like creepy and wonderful, and I loved it. Like, so good. And I am looking forward to finishing the rest of these. I just was spending so much time reading the novels that I didn't actually get to finish this one. But I will be continuing to finish this one. Like I said, haven't quite finished it, but I will keep finishing that one. Looking forward to finishing that one. Another one that I did finish was this one, which is Dissonance. And I was actually pleasantly surprised by this one. It's very cool. The world building was incredible, in my opinion. There's like each little chapter kind of opens up with a quote from one of the kind of textbooks that the character would be using to learn how to be a walker. And a walker is a person that has the ability to travel between parallel worlds. Basically, every time that somebody makes a choice, an echo world is formed, and walkers can kind of travel between the echo worlds to help protect the integrity of the key world or the original world. So walkers have no echoes, but everyone else, like, either have original in the key world and then they have echoes in the echo world. And the main character, Dell, she's kind of almost finished her training. She's getting towards the end of it. And some things happen, and she makes a mistake, quite a large mistake, and she ends up kind of on probation. But she meets this boy. She's had a crush on the original for a long time, and then she starts kind of talking to his echoes and running into his echoes. And yeah, things kind of develop from there. But there's also a really interesting tie to music. All of the walkers are like kind of musical prodigies, and the way that they can tell if there's a problem with one of the echo worlds has to do with like how the music sounds to them, whether it's like in key or not, and like each kind of world has its own frequency. Yeah, it's really interesting, and like I said, I think the world building was really, really well done. It's a little more romancy than most books that I generally enjoy, but I quite enjoyed it, and I actually purchased the second book in the series to read in August. So looking forward to that, because I was pleasantly surprised by this one. I'd kind of been putting off reading it. Like I said, I picked it up ages ago for like $2, and because I was intrigued by the concept, and I just didn't read it. So I'm really glad that I finally did, because I was pleasantly surprised. I also finished this guy. I spent a day reading on the beach and finished this guy up. This is Infinite in Between by Carolyn Mackler. This was awesome, actually, like pretty incredible. The concept is you have a group of 5 kids, and they end up in the same freshman orientation group, and as their kind of activity, they write letters to their future selves at graduation, and they make a kind of pact. They're going to all meet up at graduation and read those letters, and it's basically just what happens to them in high school. So every kind of, you have months and years, and kind of each section has a chapter about each character. Some months only have one character, some months have all the characters. It just kind of walks through all of their experiences in high school, and some of them have some pretty terrible things happen to them. They go through some big changes. And just kind of walks through their everyday life in high school, and then like kind of at the end they come to the realization, basically like goes right to graduation. And they come to the realization that it's not like the journey, it's not the beginning or the end, it's the journey that's important, the infinite in between. So Yeah, I thought it was a really interesting novel. I probably would have liked this even more if I had read it in high school, I think, but definitely was an enjoyable read and a pretty quick read too, so quite liked that one. I also read, ebook I read was The Miniaturist by Jessie Burton. And that one was weird. It was really weird. Um, it's not the kind of thing that I usually read. It's like a historical fiction, but there was kind of like some underlying fantasy elements, but not obvious ones. Um, so, for one, this young woman, she gets married, um, and discovers some secrets about the family she's married into, and I won't spoil those secrets because I was kind of surprised by them actually. Um, and there's this miniaturist who is a woman, and she makes miniatures, and the main character Nella um, commissions her to make some miniatures for a dollhouse that her new husband has bought for her, and the miniatures are kind of like uncannily truthful, and they're kind of revealing secrets, almost like the woman knows things that she shouldn't know. And yeah, it was interesting, definitely suspenseful. Like, it kept me on the edge of my seat and I kept reading it. um, but it was weird. Kind of weird. um, yeah, good but weird. That's about all I can say. Like I said, I don't want to give anything away really because it does rely a lot on suspense, and not really knowing what's going to happen. So it opens with a funeral, so you're kind of in like, throughout the whole book, you know somebody's going to die. Um, you just don't really know who yet, whose funeral it is until the end. Um, yeah, but it was a good read. Definitely interesting. And the final one that I finished in July was this one, Half Blood Blues. Now, I liked this, but I didn't love it. Um, I can definitely see why it won the Scotiabank Giller Prize and why it was like a Man Booker Prize finalist, and like it's definitely very literary. Um, but I don't know. It's about a man named Sid who was a jazz player in Berlin and Paris at the outbreak of the Second World War. And one of his fellow bandmates who is a black German, um, was arrested by the Nazis and kind of sent to a concentration camp. And so you follow him for the most part. You're following the band um, in either Berlin or Paris, depending on which part of the story, in 1939. There's also a significant chunk of the book where you're following two of the band members in 1992, as kind of the story of this their band member who was arrested, is being made into a documentary. And they're kind of going overseas to see this documentary, and then they discover that he's alive and not dead like they thought. So yeah, he's kind of like owning up to the mistakes that he made, I guess. Yeah, it was interesting, and the characters came to life for sure. It's beautifully written, very period appropriate, like the lingo and everything, the slang and stuff that she uses is fantastically appropriate. The story, not a lot happens. So, yeah, sometimes it was hard to keep reading because not a lot is going on. But like I said, it's definitely very literary, still a beautiful book, a lot of lessons to be learned, just not, I liked it, didn't love it. And then I started reading, the last book that was on my booktubeathon TBR was The Kiss of Deception by Mary E. Pearson. I have it around somewhere. I think it's in my bag, but I started it. I just didn't finish it. I ran out of time and just didn't get a chance to finish it, but I'm enjoying it so far. And yeah, that's how I'm going to start my August, is by reading that one. And then I do have the second book as well that I'm going to be reading, hopefully. Yeah. So that's kind of what I read in July, and through the booktubeathon. Not a huge list, but still pretty proud of myself. I've been in a little bit of a slump reading-wise, so I just feels good to get back going and being excited about reading again. And I'm pretty excited for August. I've got lots on my list. So yeah, look forward to continuing to read. So if you enjoyed this video, please tap the subscribe button down below, sorry, or give the video a big thumbs up. And that's it for today, and I'll see you next time. Bye.